if we're the largest and one of the largest export businesses in the world.
And consumer protection can only come if the right people are in the business.
Correct.
Whose customer is it? Is it the customer of the airlines and hotels, or is it the customer of the travel agent and tour operator who bring the customer to the airline? Namaskar and welcome to Point of View Vijay Mohanraj, my channel. Today, as I promised all my listeners that I would be bringing on my channel some extraordinary people. And I've kept my promise. Every time when I bring on a person on this channel, he has got a story which is different, a story which is unique. And today, I have the privilege of having with me a person from the largest organization of the world as far as tourism is concerned, the SKÅL International. I'm privileged to be in Colombo, and I got an opportunity to meet her at the 54th SKÅL Congress being held in Sri Lanka. So I want you people to subscribe to my channel and make it possible for me to bring people of such high caliber every time there is a broadcast which I'm doing. Welcome to the channel, Denise. Her name is Denise Crafton.
Thank you very much indeed.
And the world president. Just to put things in perspective, SKÅL International is an organization, exists in 85 countries. It has 350 clubs and 12,500 members. This is the size of the organization, and I'm privileged to have with me Denise Crafton, who is the world president. I have hit upon a jackpot that I'm in Colombo, and she has agreed to talk about SKÅL, talk about herself, and talk about what's happening in the world today. Welcome, Denise. So I want to start, Denise, by talking to my listeners, let them know who you are, because this podcast is all about you. So I would like you to talk about your formative years and how you reached this stage right from your young days.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure to be on here with you and also to be in this gorgeous city and country of Sri Lanka. I started my journey in the industry when I was 21 years of age.
Okay.
And I applied for a position in a hotel group. In those days, the largest hotel group in Australia, called Flag Hotels. And I applied for a position in reservations. Didn't really think I'd get the job, but I did.
Okay.
And from there, my journey began. And I didn't know what was ahead of me, but wow, has it been exciting. I'd been with the company for about 3 years and I was promoted to be manager. I stayed there for another 3 years and I was asked to handle all their inbound in promoting Australia overseas. And so at the ripe age of about 27, I found myself on a plane going to all the big trade shows around the world, promoting Australia and the hotel group.
So before you got this job at 21 years, where are you from? I mean, which city of Australia?
I was born and bred in Melbourne, beautiful Melbourne, where the MCG and the cricket is.
Yes, of course.
And came from a very sporting background. And so we had the cricket on all the time, the football, St Kilda supporter, AFL supporter. We grew up in Melbourne, entire family was in Melbourne, a large family, and we just enjoyed Melbourne life.
Okay. So after you got this job and you got exposed to so many countries because you had to go and visit trade shows, what is it that brought you to SKÅL? I mean, how is it that you got into this organization? You must have been new at that time.
Absolutely. Well, firstly, I mean, I was put in the position where I was promoting a country that nobody knew where it was, except that it was a long way away. Anyone that's travelled to Australia will know you don't do the flight under 24 hours. And so that experience then put me into working with Tourism Australia, Tourism Victoria, sitting on a few boards, and then I was introduced to SKÅL.
Okay.
And in those days, to start with, SKÅL didn't take women.
Okay.
So all the senior managers in the company, the rest of the managers were men. They all belonged to SKÅL, and they used to go off to the SKÅL lunch.
Okay.
And one day they came back and they said they now accept women. And so I joined, and that's where I started.
Okay. So from the time you joined, right to the time you got active in organizing for SKÅL, that must have been a journey which is a lot of learning that must have gone into it.
An amazing journey, and I don't think I understood how important SKÅL would become into my business life as well as my private life. The mantra of SKÅL is doing business with friends, and the amount of friends that you do meet around the world is staggering.
Okay.
And the amount of business that you can do with those friends. And as I said to somebody yesterday in the conference I'm attending, if you are going to trust somebody to do business with, who would you trust more than a friend?
Cool.
And that is what the entire association is built on. So from there, I became the president of the Melbourne Club after a few years, and then I was the president of Australia, and then I got onto the international side of SKÅL.
Amazing, amazing growth and amazing journey that you have with SKÅL. After coming to this position where you are today, where you are right, you're the number one person in the organization and a very important organization, where the tourism all over the world, I mean, they look forward to these kind of areas. How do you feel about where SKÅL was when you joined and where SKÅL is today? Because as president, you would have seen huge changes taking place over the years.
The tourism industry is a resilient industry, but it has been through a lot of turmoil. It doesn't matter what hits the world, tourism will be affected, whether it was COVID or whether it's political situations, of which there's a lot going on right now. But the one thing about tourism and the one thing about SKÅL, it is resilient. Our membership numbers might fluctuate because of what's going on in the world,
Yeah.
but the industry itself is also very smart. For instance, if Australia I can speak about quite openly. Australia's major market was China. So it's now about our third market, but our biggest market's become New Zealand, because they're our friends across the water.
Okay.
So the whole industry will go around and move around and look for different markets, and every country in SKÅL is doing that right now.
Okay. So I want to tell my listeners, see, you can imagine the growth this Denise has had over the years, right from a person who joined the industry as a young girl, and then she's come to where she is, where she's leading the entire world and as a president of SKÅL. So Denise, I want you to tell my listeners what you think is going to happen with what's happening in the world right now. What's your opinion?
Well, like I said, the industry is very resilient, and it will take a lot of moves, and the airline industry will have to work out how they're going to manoeuvre what's going on right now. They are looking for new airspace to travel.
Okay.
Hotels are looking for new customers. As I said before, destinations are looking for new markets. But we'll settle on that. Every country will work it out. And those countries that unfortunately are sitting in turmoil, and we feel very sad about that, out of that turmoil sometimes becomes an opportunity for another country to go looking for more market share from another destination. The world and the industry at the moment, as I said, is in a very, very volatile position, but tourism will always be one of the major export markets in the world. And so it will survive because countries like Sri Lanka need the currency that tourism supports and brings in.
I want you to talk a little bit about the history of SKÅL. I mean, not that I don't think you're an historian that way, but with your so many years of being involved with different presidents and the past of SKÅL, can you just talk about the history of SKÅL?
I'm in admiration of the founders of SKÅL. They were people that were visionaries. They seriously had a vision for what they wanted to do. They'd come off a trade show. There were 6 of them, and they'd been to the launch of a new airline route. And they sat around and said, we're good friends, we're doing business together.
Okay.
And so they decided that they would start a club in Paris. So they started a SKÅL club in Paris. And
Which year was that?
In 1934.
Okay.
So we're going back 31 years.
2 World Wars.
91 years.
2 World Wars, yeah.
So it's quite an extraordinary story that they had the vision to do that. And from that, what we've got today, as you said earlier, is over 12,000 members in over 80 countries around the world, with so many members, and all actively involved in tourism.
Okay.
And so that is what's grown today. Most of our clubs around the world have been in existence 70 years plus,
Okay.
80 years plus. It's an unbelievable achievement for these 6 young guys that went on a mission all those years ago.
True. And I totally agree with you, because we are evolving all the time. We're resilient, like you said. Human beings as such are ones who keep changing. They change and adapt according to the times. But to be surviving from 1934 as an organization itself is resilience. It cannot nobody can question that.
No.
We can have ups and downs, but nobody can question
Correct.
that. So what do you think is going to be the future of SKÅL? What do you think?
Excellent question, because we're now in the throes of discussing that. So I'm the chairman of the board of directors for the SKÅL International. And one of our major issues that we're discussing right now is who are we going to be and what do we want to look like in 5 years' time?
Okay.
We need to move this organisation forward. We've inherited this amazing organisation and we want to pass it on to the next generation.
True.
And we're caretaking it for it at the moment. We're looking after it and we need to make sure that we do it properly. So we're in the middle of doing a forward strategy. We're in the middle of throwing pretty much everything up in the air for the organisation and making sure that what we hand over to the next generation is what they want. We don't know how they're going to communicate. We don't know how they're going to want to meet. You know, I mean, when you think back about over 90 years, those people didn't have credit cards. They didn't have.
True.
They worked in cash. You know, they didn't have aeroplanes. They might have had very limited versions of them. They barely had motor cars. And so the world that we've come from and how this has been grown is very different to what we need to pass on. And that's what we're trying to work out at the moment. And we need the younger generation to give us a lot of information on that. So that's who we're working with.
So you've been traveling to so many regions since you've been president, and also before that, because I know that you've been in many different committees looking after so many aspects of SKÅL's tourism. You've been to different regions. So what is your take on that? I mean, how do you feel what's happening in Europe and what's happening in Latin America, what's happening in US, what's happening in Australia? Is it similar or is it different?
No, it's very different from region to region. I started out this year, my presidency started on the 1st of January, and the very first place I went to, actually I attended a meeting in Australia, then in New Zealand, but then I went to South Africa and met with all the clubs in South Africa, of which we have 7.
Yeah.
And that was quite inspiring. I had no idea what I was going to face, but you know, they had similar issues to what Australia had and what New Zealand has. But then I went to Latin America and to Uruguay. And Uruguay, very different again, very relaxed. They don't take things too seriously. They're more of a party sort of nation.
Okay.
But then you go into North America and that's business, business, business. But then they need to be, because their markets are down. Their inbound tourism is down about 15% or something on last year, because of the political turmoil. And then I went to Cusco, and of course now I'm here, and it's very different from place to place, from a surface point of view. But deep down, they've all got the same issues.
Okay.
They're trying to grow their tourism. Sri Lanka has a record. I was talking to people yesterday, they have a record of backpacker market. And one of the things I said to them was, great. And they said, but we want more luxury. And I said, well, go after it. There are companies that do good luxury business. But don't underestimate your backpacker market, because in 20 years or 10 years' time, there'll be families with kids, and there'll be family market. And then 20 years after that, they'll probably be retirees, and they'll be cashed up, and they'll be luxury market. So you're nurturing your new markets right now. And so Sri Lanka is a very, very interesting country to get new inbound and to talk about them. They sit on the border of India, and that's where their major market comes from.
Really amazing for me to be sitting with you and talking, because you over the years evolved yourself. I mean, whatever you're telling me now is that you have accepted the changes that are going to happen, and what is happening right now and what is going to happen. And that is a lesson for all of us to learn, because if you are ready to change, you're open to evolving, then learning has no problem. You don't have a problem.
I agree with that totally, but I'm very cautious about, I believe in change, but I'm very cautious about the way we do it, because I think you always need to know where you came from to know where you're going to go.
True.
And so I'm very conscious of, we have a lot of senior members in SKÅL. These are people that have worked CEO of airlines, top jobs in the industry, and they may now be retired, or they may now be running their own organisations or companies. And I'm very, very cautious to ask their opinion, because, you know, we need mentoring. It's all very well to say we want to go in the direction for the young people, but they really need to understand the organisation, where it's come from, what it is, so they can take it forward.
So talking about young people, we see a huge change in the methods of working. I'm sure when you started, you were doing a lot of things manually, and then over the years, the technology has kept changing, and today it's a completely different picture. It's growing so fast. Technology keeps on changing. So what do you think about that? I mean, how do you feel that under your presidency, which you have taken on now, there is a adaptation to technology by your members?
Yeah, well, when I first started, I used to use the telex. I don't even know the people out there know what that is. But yes, today it is very, very different. We all have to adapt to social media. We've got an incredible team. SKÅL's head office is in Torremolinos in Spain, and they're very savvy on technology. So I do cheat a little bit. But they're incredible teachers. But yes, we do need to adapt, and we do participate in all of the social media outlets that we can, and we make sure that our message gets out there as wide far as it can. Otherwise, we're never going to reach the younger members that we need to nurture and bring into the organisation. And we also need to bring them in to be the presidents of our clubs, because all of our clubs have committees. And we also need to make sure that they understand the aspirations of the organisation and where we want to go with it.
There's one thing that I need to ask you, because today we are exposed to so much of turmoil. You have the Ukraine-Russia war, you have Europe in turmoil, you have what happened in India and Pakistan, and now, of course, Middle East. There's so much of turmoil that's happening in the world. How do you think that the tourism is going to, recover from these kind of things?
It's always difficult when there's issues, whether it be tsunamis or the unfortunate air crash in India recently, or whether it be wars and turmoil. We actually have a club in Russia, which we're probably not going to have for too much longer. We have a club in Israel. We had the Red Sea. We have these clubs around the world that are in turmoil, and it's heartbreaking to see. But the tourism industry will move themselves to where the flights can go. As I said before, the airlines are looking for better airspace. I come from Australia, So to get through to Europe, where you normally would fly over some pretty war-torn countries at the moment, so that's all new airspace now.
Okay.
And so everyone is just reorganising their own organisations and their own companies. And as I said, they are resilient. They will work out their new markets. It may be that somebody had America as their major market and Americans have stopped travelling for the moment. And maybe they can go and get some business from another market that's more lucrative. But it's extraordinarily sad, but the travel industry will adapt, it will work it out. I've seen it happen with COVID.
Yes, of course. I think that must have been, for everybody, the worst time in tourism.
Well, I come from Melbourne, which was the most locked down city in the world.
Yes,
so I was locked down for a year. We closed our borders, nobody came in or out for a year. So that hurt our tourism industry hugely.
Okay.
But we've adapted, we're back to it. We're almost back to pre-COVID tourism numbers.
So the UNWTO, I have read that it's the greatest employment generation industry, tourism.
Yep.
And 1 in every 10 jobs come in tourism.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take into account the indirect jobs also, which are connected, the statistics say that 1 into 5. But this is maybe a couple of years or 3 years old statistics. Mm-hmm. But it still gives you the direction on how important employment is for the rest of the world, for entire world. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. We have a shortage in tourism at the moment, particularly in hospitality. But one of the things that I remember quite well was several years ago, Australia had an airport pilot strike.
Okay.
And so the hotels weren't getting there, any particular place like, say, Tasmania, states in Australia that relied on air, they weren't getting any tourism in. It was very minimal. And one of the areas that suffered the most was the egg port.
Okay.
No one was having breakfast. The bakers, no one was eating bread. And so the actual, supplementary organisations that tourism caters to, if you think that everything that you have in a hotel, wine, goes on and on and on, and all of a sudden it stops. So it's quite amazing that once tourism hurts, everybody hurts.
Okay. Talking to you is a privilege, Denise, but I can not help but ask you a few questions which have been troubling many people around me. One of them is, I feel that we are not actually, I feel that we can increase our membership manyfold because tourism is such a wide subject. Do you think SKÅL is the leading travel and tourism organization which can represent the entire industry?
Absolutely. We're the only tourism organisation in the world that represents all sectors of the tourism industry. We are hospitality, we're tourism, we've got travel agents, wholesalers, airlines, tourist attractions, wineries, the list goes on.
40 categories, I believe. Yeah, I read about it.
Yep, 40 categories. And to be honest, one part of the new strategy that we're looking at doing going into the future is looking at more, because the industry is rapidly changing, which is part of what we've been talking about. And as the industry rapidly changes, so do the jobs. True. I mean, it used to be that a general manager used to run a hotel pretty much. Now it's a revenue manager.
Okay.
But we never had a category for a revenue manager, but they're very senior now.
Okay.
And it goes on from there. And so we have to make sure that SKÅL going forward reflects the evolving tourism industry.
Okay.
And that's exactly what's happening right now.
Another aspect which is troubling a lot of people in the industry who are in the industry, like travel agents, tour operators, that the customer, whose customer is it? Is it the customer of the airlines and hotels, or is it the customer of the travel agent and tour operator who bring the customer to the airlines? and the hotels. The reason why I'm asking this question is that we are seeing over the years the distribution channel is getting narrower and narrower. And because of technology, a lot of the business is done directly from the supplier to the customer. So how do you think, because we at SKÅL, a lot of our members are from this category of distribution. So what do you think about how we can safeguard the businesses and existence of these people?
Well, I think that well, firstly, that you're right, the distribution system has changed incredibly since I started doing it. It used to be that there was like a food chain that you had the travel agent, went to the wholesaler, and there was a food, and then eventually got to the hotel and then went all the way back again. And there was a lot of commission in there, you know, it was like a 30% commission or something in there, which put the prices up. Today, you've got all these shortcuts. It's a very different distribution system. You don't have all those people in the middle of it. However, I think it's really important to note that you can't just be an online travel agent without having all the correct licenses and being a proper business. The airlines don't accept that. So you've got to be able to take money on behalf of an airline. You've got to be a proper licensed agent. So some people just say to me, oh, I get online and I book, and well, you might do that directly with the airline. If you're doing it with an agent, you have to be doing it correctly. I think whose customer's who? I think that the customer at the end of the day is the travel agent's customer, but then the airline, the travel agent's their customer. So whoever's making the point of contact is the customer, as far as I'm concerned. But it is a tricky question, I agree.
Tricky, very tricky.
Very tricky question.
Because this is a debate which has been going on for quite some time. Everybody's existed somehow. We've managed to, the entire industry has managed to survive.
Yep, but you know, I do think that if a travel agent makes a booking with an airline, they're the...
But what you have said about customer is very important, because we have a customer, there should be customer protection, consumer protection.
Yep.
Every country has a Consumer Protection Act.
Correct.
And the customer is supreme. He's the guy, he's the person who is to be looked after. And consumer protection can only come if the right people are in the business.
Correct.
So, amazing. I mean, I wanted this view from somebody of your stature. It's really, I think it's a big relief to the entire distribution channel in the industry today. And anybody who is watching Denise say these, I think you'll be delighted to hear what she's saying. Okay. So Denise, I have another issue which is not major, but a person like you with so much experience would have a message to give to a lot of people who are in the industry, that is the agents, the airlines, and probably the government as well, because today the government would listen to a person of your stature. You're going to so many different countries, and I'm sure you've been interviewed by a lot of people from the media. So what is the message that you give to the people who are in the industry?
Well, I think to the industry, I think the message to the industry and the message to the governments around the world are quite different. But the message to the industry is to be honest and to transact your business correctly, and to probably be a member of an organisation like SKÅL, to make sure that you've got the proper respect in the industry, because it does bring respect to be a member of an organisation like SKÅL. It also brings a lot of business. To the governments of the world, I say look at tourism more seriously. Some countries are brilliant at the way they handle it, and they take it very seriously, and other governments, I've seen other governments don't have a tourism minister with a single portfolio.
Yeah.
And if we're the largest and one of the largest export businesses in the world,
True.
then
amazing. You hit the nail on the head, right? We are the largest, you said we are the largest export industry, and that's a stream of revenue which every country looks for.
Yep. And I've noticed even in Sri Lanka, and I know that they don't have, they're trying to build their business, but the tourism minister the other day spoke and he had 3 portfolios.
Yes.
And they were huge.
Yeah.
And I know in Australia we have 1 for each of those portfolios. And that's not criticising Sri Lanka at all, because they obviously have a smaller economy. But you know, it's such an important industry that it deserves a focus that is 100%.
Okay. So my listeners you can imagine that I have with me a person of this stature. Very rarely could you get a president of an international organization like SKÅL. By now you would have realized how big it is after speaking to Denise on different subjects. So I want to thank you, Denise, for coming onto this my channel, Point of View, and talking absolutely from the heart. You have given so much of direction to the listeners, and I'm sure that not only the listeners on this channel who are loyal to me, but I'm sure anybody who watches this channel is going to have something to take away.
My absolute pleasure. Been delightful to have the chat. I always love talking about tourism and SKÅL. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. It's a privilege to have you with me today. And we've gone international. So I've met her in Colombo, Sri Lanka. So that's it. That's the good news. For my listener, I would request you to subscribe to this channel so that we can continue our good work. Thank you very much.